Outcast. I'm your host, HC, and with me is.
Wolf.
And today, well, this was RBS, I suppose. No, it's the new big thing, kinda. So of course we need to talk about this, and also because big fan of the game here. Yes, I said game, not games. Game. The Last of Us on HBO. So the first season just finished, and
Mhm.
as a big fan of the game, I decided, you know what, this will be an interesting one to do. So, like I said, I'm a fan of the game. I come in knowing the game. I played the game. I love the game. I also played the sequel. I have problems, but that's for another. That's for later. That's for later.
Mhm.
Wolf, what is your experience with The Last of Us prior to the show?
I know of the game, and I think like I've seen. I guess I think it's the first 20-ish minutes. I would say like I knew enough to know that spoilers. Joel's daughter dies. That's all I knew
Uh,
from the game. Like that's the only spoiler I really knew, and then and I managed to stay completely spoiler free until because it's like, oh, I might get to play it one day. I'm not, I'm like pretty much everyone else out there. I never was able to get a PS5 to get the remaster or whatever, and I'm not going back to buy a PS4 just for The Last of Us, to be honest. And then, hey, we're coming
well,
out with
if
it
you
on
have a
PC, so
PS3, you know the original came out on the
I don't have that
PS3
either, and I'm
already.
not going back to buy that either.
Well, sucks to be you.
Yeah, it does, but it's coming out on Steam, so I can finally play it. Yay.
Well,
And now I
hope
can
you'll enjoy it
compare and
one.
contrast between the show and the game and say, what did the show do better and what did the game do better? It'll be fun when I get the chance to do that. But until then, yeah, the only thing I know like, a few things about the game, but otherwise, surprisingly, I managed to stay spoiler free on that for this entire time. People ask me
Mhm.
how. You live under a
And then
rock, that's how.
and then you watch the show, and now you're completely spoiled because well, yeah, it's an adaptation, so obviously.
Mhm.
But okay, so basically, Wolf is basically going to talk about this as a show on its own. I'm gonna do some comparing because
Mhm.
I. But in terms of general opinions, no spoilers yet. I think it's a really good show. I think, and I want to say because I was watching it with a friend of mine, and she didn't play the game as well. All she knew about the game is, I was talking about it,
Mhm.
and and then and then there's this thing where it's interesting to see how people react to adaptations because there's always gonna be the crowd who never bothered with it, who never got to experience the original, and there's the audience who is a fan of the original. So it was interesting to watch with her, and she knowing nothing, me, I'm a fan, and we both had a good time. She's mad about the ending, but we'll get there. Um, but overall, I think as both a show on its own and as an adaptation of the game, this is a really good show.
That's fair. Like, yeah, for me on a show as its own, it was exceptionally good. Like, I think they came out very strong with this first season.
Hmm. Yeah. I will also say, in terms of just a general non-spoilery review kind of stuff, I adore the cinematography. Like some of the shots literally look like the game.
Mm.
Some of the and you can tell that they are not afraid to wear the source material on the front and center. They're like, we are adapting this game. We are gonna give people exactly what they remember from this game, and from costume design, the sets, the cinematography, everything just screams The Last of Us, and it looks so good. And also in terms of like Pedro Pascal is just beautiful, perfect for Joel. He he did such a good job. Bella Ramsey, I was a bit. I was a bit on how that she didn't resemble the game as much, because Pedro Pascal really nailed the look. With Bella Ramsey, it was a bit. But she did. She also did wonderful. She was also great, and everyone else did fantastic too. And fun fact: the actress who plays Marlene in the show actually reprises the role from the game.
Yeah, both Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson are in the show.
They are in the show, yes. Troy Baker plays a kind of a no name. If he has a name in the game, then he doesn't really matter. But yeah, he plays someone that we come across later on in the show, and Ashley Johnson is playing Ellie's mother. Um, so and this was cool to see. Like I get, and because I'm so happy that their appearances were more than just simple cameos. Like if we're gonna compare this to Uncharted, because haha, Naughty Dog games, when you compare Nolan North's cameo to the actual parts Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson got, there's nothing to compare, right?
Yeah.
Although, to be honest, I still think Nolan North's cameo is one of the best moments in the Uncharted movie, but we have another episode about that. Go listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, not much to really talk about, because I can't really delve into the plot stuff in the non-spoilers. So shall we start talking spoilers?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So in case you haven't seen the show yet, go watch it. We'll wait, because you're gonna hit pause, and then we'll keep talking once you watch it and you hit play again. So spoilers come in 3, 2, 1. You still here? Good. Joel dies. Oh no, wait, that's the second game.
Spoilers.
Laugh at my jokes, damn it, because I need some sort of validation.
Spoilers. I didn't
Let's
know
be honest.
that. I've never played the games, HC. I've been living under my rock this whole time.
Wolf,
no, I knew Joel
literally
died.
seconds before we started recording, you asked me, "Oh, Marlene is not the one that kills Joel
I
in
didn't
the
ask
second
you.
game?"
I told you a story of I was talking to a friend. If you're gonna out me, motherfucker, get it right. All right, get my stupidity right, motherfucker. I was talking to a friend before we did this recording, and I got Abby and Marlene confused because I know nothing about these games, and I'm old, and I'm allowed to be. Because I thought, Joel died in the first game, not the second game.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I didn't think he had killed Marlene in the first game. I thought like that was their departure, and that's where they were going to do something different. But no, that's not the case. I'm just dumb.
No, honestly, mistakes happen, right? I'm just because I'm messing with you doesn't make you dumb for it, right?
I mean, it's fair though. Like, I'm old. I'm allowed to do this, but I am stupid sometimes, and I did think I did confuse Marlene and Abby as characters. That's just, that's a thing. I did that. But anyways, yeah. Joel doesn't die.
Not in this season anyway. That's until the second one. But all right, back on topic. So since you're the newcomer to the show, like, is there anything you want to ask me, the person who played the game? Is there something you want to start with?
Oh man, why you gotta come out with the hard questions first?
It's only logical, dude.
I am curious, right? I've heard so this one isn't necessarily about the show or the game. This is about the outlook. I'm curious to hear your opinion. I've seen quite a few articles now come out about how The Last of Us isn't a video game adaptation. And I'm very curious because
the idiot who said that.
There's been quite a few. But it always boggles the mind, right, where Hollywood has to distance itself from video games for whatever reason, right? And I'm curious, what would your take on that be?
Well, I guess because this is like a topic that we can go into in like other podcasts. But
true, but looking at it for just The Last of Us,
for the sake of this,
does The Last of Us keep faithful enough, or does it change enough that you would
I'd
or wouldn't call it an adaptation?
I'd say it's a perfect adaptation because, for one, it keeps the story very, it's the story itself is very loyal. The parts that it changes, changes are really minor. Like, okay, you want to know a change? Here's the change. Where in the flashback episode with Ellie and Riley, in the kiss scene, Ellie's to the right in the game. Ellie's to the right side of the frame and Riley's to the left, but in the show, Ellie's to the left and Riley's to the right.
Well,
Totally different, I
well, I
know.
know
It
from
changes
it
everything.
does, it does. Being on the right and left, man, that's a huge difference. I think,
Yeah.
from what I understand, the biggest difference though is with Bill and Frank, correct?
Mhm. It's not really a difference. It's just because in the game you just meet Bill, and he alludes to to his partner who died, named Frank. But Frank, you'd never see this Frank. You never actually meet him.
Mm.
So basically, what they did is that they gave us a whole new episode focusing on their story. And the one thing that does happen is that, yeah, when Frank is discovered to be sick and he's on death's bed and he's about to die, so Bill, dies with him, and he leaves everything for Joel and Ellie to take on their journey, basically, in case someone needs it.
Mhm.
In the game, you do meet Bill, and he mentions that he had a partner named Frank, and he basically just owes Joel a favor, and that's how Joel and Ellie get the truck.
I would
But
argue that this is probably one of those instances where the show did better than the game, from what the
well,
little I do
because
know. And
it's
like the
like it.
addition was well done.
I agree completely, and we'll get to it. But I will say this, because even though it's different in the past few years, like we had Detective Pikachu, we had the Sonic movies, we had Cuphead, and not to mention Arcane and stuff. Video game adaptations are becoming good recently.
Mm-hmm.
I started noticing that because there's kind of this debate between the Sonic movies and the Mario movie that's about to come. At the time of this recording, the Mario movie is not out yet; it's coming. But I've seen people debate like that. That the Mario movie looks more like a Mario movie than the Sonic movies are Sonic movies, and like I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think it's kind of a question of direction because, yeah, the Sonic movies take themselves more as we are making movies with these characters and we are taking elements from the source material, but we can't necessarily do everything from the games because it's still a new medium, it's still a new thing, and whether or not you agree with it or not, that's another story. But
Yeah, I
they are
guess that comes
they
down
are they
to
are trying to fit themselves to a movie, and the Mario movie, at least from the trailers, seems to be like oh, this is how it is in the game, so we're gonna do it like that. Mario has games where he's in a cart, we'll put him in a cart. Mario has a suit where he's a cat or a raccoon, let's throw that in there because that's how the game is.
I
So
guess
I just want to say that I'm noticing two different approaches regarding this adaptation thing, and The Last of Us, I want to say, is kind of playing it somewhere in the middle, where it wears the fact that it's adaptation on its sleeve and it's proud of it, but they also add stuff because they realize this is a show, we are changing mediums, we can't just throw things in because that's what the game did.
that's fair. As you said, right, we could probably have an entire discussion on the ideas of adaptations, reimaginings, remasters, and remakes, right? And
Mhm.
what each one means. I do think at the end of the day, right, adaptation is going to be somewhat subjective for many people,
Yeah.
in so much as how faithful do you think something should stay and how much do you think something should change when it's going from one type of entertainment media to another, like from TV to book, or from book to TV, or from
Mm,
video game to TV, right? Or from TV to video
That's
game, blah blah
true.
blah, etc., etc.
That's true, but at the same time, to say that The Last of Us, that the show is not a video game adaptation, that's just, I know that we said subjective opinions, you do you and
Well,
everything,
I
but
think
saying
some
it's
of
not.
that was just, again, like that kind of Hollywood mentality of we can't accept video games yet. Still, that kind of sits in the
Because
background.
let's say if people say this is not an adaptation of the game, then I'm sorry, but you're an idiot. This is factually
Agreed.
wrong.
Agreed.
This is factually wrong to say that that this is not an adaptation.
But yeah, I was curious to hear your take on that.
Because let's say, because if you want to play it the other way around, say what you want. The Harry Potter movies, those are, those, for example, they cut some things, they add some things, and whether or not you like those movies or in comparison to the books, that's a whole other discussion. But nobody would ever argue they are adaptation. But sometimes adaptation, you have to change things, you have to cut things, you have to add things. So whether or not you agree with those changes, that's a whole other debate. That's not for this forum at the moment, but it's an adaptation regardless.
It, from what I know a little bit, it is interesting. What were your thoughts coming into this? Because if I'm not mistaken, like there was the entire, news that broke a couple years back that like the Last of Us show slash movie, like what they were trying to create, right, was in like development hell or something like that.
Because I'll tell you what, I know that for the longest time they wanted it to be a movie. I know that there was talk about a movie. I'm not sure how, because I think there was also talk about that, with some proper makeup and walkout routine. People said that Troy Baker could definitely be Joel in live action as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember there were talks about a movie, but then when they just decided to make it a show, I thought that maybe it's gonna be better, because the game, in terms of story, the game is kind of sectioned, because it's implied that the entire story of the game takes place over the course of a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like from when it starts and where it ends.
Yeah.
So it may the seasons, because the game is sectioned to like you're in autumn, then winter, then summer. Not in that order, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, I get you.
So
what would you have thought of a movie instead of a show? Do you
so
like?
this
I
is
think
so this
the way I
is so this
understand
is
it, the
what I'm getting
creators.
to.
Oh, go ahead. Then I will wait.
Yeah, so this is what I'm getting to, that when you have a game that does break itself into parts in the overall story, and each part is focusing on something else, because obviously the autumn part is different than the winter part, and the winter is different from summer, so on and so forth. So it made more sense to do a show than a movie for me. Like, not to say that the movie couldn't have worked, but you would have to cut some major corners in order to fit all of this into 2 hours.
Mm.
And even still, I'd say, some of this show, in some places, could have used a bit more time. To say a movie would have been better, I think making this a show was the right call at the end of the day.
That's fair. Completely fair. The last question I would have for you, right before we get into like actual spoiler talk, I think would be, I mean, this is still, somewhat spoiler talk, I suppose, but
Yeah.
what did you think of the inclusion of like the, in episode 2, right? They do a thing of, hey, here's like how it all started, right? In Indonesia with the outbreak and everything.
Well,
What did you think of
considering
things
my
like that?
girlfriend lives in. That's funny. My girlfriend lives in Indonesia, and some of her friends told her that they actually studied in that university where they filmed some of those things. And it's like, oh shit!
Neat.
So for one, that to me it kind of hit in like an oh Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But but
But
you know
in regards to
that's
the
one.
game, you don't have that information, correct?
No, you don't, and that's one of the things I want to say because because episode 1, 2, like really when just as you start the show, you have this interview where they explain,
Yeah, that's like set in the
the
60s,
virus.
right? And like they're talking
Yeah,
about what could happen if something like that, what scared them, stuff like that, like
yeah,
a
like they
fungal
actually
person.
talk. Yeah, because actually another one of my friends, her boyfriend is actually studying that exact thing. He's studying this thing to develop a cure for it. God forbid if something like this does happen. And
We're fucked.
so, but the thing is though, you have this interview, and then in episode 2 you get this this entire thing in Indonesia with the doctor who finds out and she's like, oh yeah, no, we're doomed, we're fucked. You see, this is something it wasn't in the game, but it fits with the tone,
Mm,
it fits with the writing even. You can tell because Neil Druckmann, the director of the games, he's involved in the show,
yeah.
and you can tell. And so it was written in the same way. It was really good. I was actually floored that they made those new moments, which I was like, oh wow, okay, they're giving a bit more. And honestly, I would watch a show just about those scientists discovering the virus. I would watch a show
Mm,
all about this lady in the start of episode 2. I would. It was so interesting. It was so fascinating. And usually I say less is more when don't tell me about this. I don't really need the origin because the game works fine with just a few mentions. But
mm.
they kept it. There's enough explanation, but not too much to the point. It's like I don't care. It was good.
Well,
It
it
was.
yeah, like
It
for
was such a good balance.
like yeah, for not jumping too heavily into it, but just seeing her in episode 2, seeing this, the Indonesia, I forget her name. What is her name? I'm reading through real quick. It's not there.
You can decide
Oh
the
well,
professor.
either
Why
way,
don't
the
you?
professor in Indonesia, right? Like seeing her, like them introducing her, like, hey, this is some stuff we found. We want your professional opinion, and then just seeing her, like she has like a cup of tea, right, and it starts shaking, and she can't hold it properly. And she just sets it down and says, "My professional opinion, completely shut down the city and just bomb it all." Kill
Yeah,
everyone here. Like, holy fuck, man.
yeah.
Like, and
That
she
when that
doesn't
happened,
say,
I was like,
we're fucked. She doesn't say anything other than that, and then just says, I want to go home and be with my family. Like,
yeah,
damn.
yeah. That's like
Like, they hit you
so
hard with that
powerful.
very quickly.
Yeah, and again, it's like you don't need anything more. You just need her to say, "Nuke the city. I want to be with my family when it happens." That's all you need. That's all you need to say, to explain some of the origin of this thing, but also to just leave you with the implications
Mhm.
because holy shit, that was super powerful. I was surprised.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, like, later on, you do see where they started bombing cities within here in the US, too, right? Like, you see some of,
Hmm.
like, I think in episode 2, I think it is, they find like a crater, and like Ellie and Joel and Tess explain that to Ellie, like, hey, that was them bombing and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, that it's episode 2 because episode 2 is the
And
one
like
where
that's
they
kind of like the
really.
cutaway. That's like how they do the cutaway from like the past into the present. Like, oh, we found, hey, this is where they started bombing at. And it's like, wow, they
Mhm.
did do that. They didn't
Yeah,
care.
I want to also give credit because one of the things that struck me the most about the original game, I didn't expect to cry so early on in the game because when Joel's daughter dies, Sarah, I
Mm.
was caught so off guard. It was done differently in the show, somewhat because
Well, I think in the game, right, if I'm not mistaken, for the first little part of the game, you do play as her, right? Like
right,
that's your main
I was
character, quote
just about
unquote.
to.
And that's
Yeah,
like
you are starting
it
to play
builds up
as
a
her.
connection, right? As like, oh, this is
Mhm.
who I'm going to be playing as. and then she dies, and then you start playing for the rest of it. For the most part, is Joel, right? Like that's
Yeah, which was interesting because I've followed the game since pre-launch because a Naughty Dog fan,
I think they
and
kept
I
that
know,
hidden, right? Fairly well.
uh, yeah, because in pre-release you just knew this was gonna be between Joel and Ellie. This is the
Mm.
thing that's being pushed. These are the two you see on the cover. This is their story. You don't know about Sarah until the game starts.
Yeah, no, they did really well with that, I thought, because
Mm-hmm.
it was a great
Agreed.
way to get you a little bit attached, and then take that away and open up the rest of the game to Joel, and that way, like,
Yeah,
you have more of that connection to Joel. Like, it's interesting. Like, they did exceptionally well from what I do know
and
of it.
in the
Writing
show
it.
they do the same thing in the sense that if in the game you play as Sarah to get that connection, then in the show they gave Sarah a lot more to do before the virus strikes,
Yeah,
and now they managed to find the ways to connect you to Sarah for the very little time she's on screen, and her that is super effective in both, and because in the original game, I wasn't ready to cry when she dies. I wasn't ready for the game to start, and 15 minutes later, I'm already in tears. And I wasn't necessarily in tears this time because I was ready,
mm.
but fuck, it was still effective.
Well, I think, right, for what they did here, if I'm not mistaken, episode 1 is mostly, not entirely, but mostly the story of, Sarah, and like the beginning of the outbreak from, Sarah, Joel, and
Kind
Tommy
of. Yeah.
guys.
I was actually it's half the prologue, half the start of the actual game.
Yeah, I would, yeah, it's like it's half and half, maybe a
And
little bit more
even
leaning
there,
towards like the prologue, I would
yeah.
say.
And even there, they add stuff because the
Mm,
conversation between Ellie and Marlene, that's a show exclusive. That's not in the game.
mm.
The first time you see Ellie in the game, she attacks Joel because the scene where Marlene tells Joel and Tess that they need to escort Ellie into the Fireflies establishment. That's the first time you see Ellie in the game. You don't
Ah,
everything before that the show shows you. That's new for the show.
okay, interesting. But
Mhm.
I mean, again, like the show has to, right? They have to set up those characters a little bit so you know who
No,
they are.
definitely. Again,
So
I'm not
again,
saying this is a
oh no, I
bad
get
thing.
you. I know. What I'm saying is it's another one of those examples, right, of the show adapting properly, right, and doing
Yeah,
exactly
and
what it needs to.
jumping from episode 1 to the final episode, actually, in the game, you only really find out about the connection Marlene and Anna, Ellie's mother, had in in kind of supplementary stuff. There's no cutscene. No one mentions it. It's optional stuff you can find lying around and listen at your own time. You don't even have to
It's
collect those things.
lore.
And yeah, it's low, exactly. It's there if you want it, but it's not a part of the main story. And
Hmm.
here, not only do you get the scene where where Anna is giving birth to Ellie, and you just see more of Anna in general, and you see her and Marlene actually talk, and you see their friendship beforehand. But I was also really touched that you have Ashley Johnson, the original Ellie, playing Anna. That
Hmm.
was really cool.
Yeah, that was very neat to see.
Mm.
I
And
will,
just
and I think they did quite well at like changing her look enough. It took me a minute to recognize that it was her, and you
I
know,
I
I
can
didn't
just
even
recognize her
realize that
face.
was Troy Baker until I, read it elsewhere, right?
Yeah, no, Troy took me a bit more to recognize, but then like I just noticed it, so it's like, wait, that's Troy Baker. Ashley Johnson I recognized right away because because Ellie's face in the game is basically her own face,
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of gave it away for me.
That's fair. I'm not as like used to it, so to me it didn't stand out as much, and it took me a minute. I do know Ashley Johnson, like I'm familiar with some of her work from some of the stuff she's been in, especially
Yeah,
Critical
she was
Role.
she was Terra in the Teen Titans cartoon. She
Hmm.
was Renette in the 2012 TMNT. She's been in stuff.
Yeah, she's been quite a few things, but yeah, it
Mhm.
it it took me a minute, so I think like they did quite well at you know doing what they needed to do for those characters. But yeah, like Troy Baker didn't even realize until I read it elsewhere. It's like, wait, that was him? Did not
It's
know.
no, Troy Baker like keeps his momentum of just being in everything. And it's like, dude, you already did The Last of Us. No, but jokes aside, he did great. It was great to see him get, and again, an actual role. Which it is funny that his role is like one of David's friends, and in the original game, David is played by Nolan North,
Yeah.
who's the original Nathan Drake, and which was the other Naughty Dog franchise going along at the same time. So in a sense, I like how both David and his friend there are basically like the cameo roles now. That in the game it's like, oh, this is the Nolan North character, all right. And in the show, it's like, oh, his friend is Troy Baker, the original Joe. All right. This entire part of the story is just cameos, apparently. But I'm not saying this is a bad thing for the record. Just an observation.
That's fair.
You know what? If we are on that fucking fact, if we are on that topic, listen. This was when they did the David plot. People usually tend to agree it's one of the most heart-wrenching parts of the game, because it's where after Joel gets hurt and Ellie is taking care of them and everything that transpires. So I was really interested in seeing how they would do that. And
I thought that was really good because, again, right?
I was just about to say,
yeah, like you start off feeling for David, right, and and all of them. Like, all right, I'm kind of here for these people. Yeah,
And that's another thing that in the game I never felt that. In the show, I'm like, maybe he has a point.
Like, yeah, like and again, right? Yeah, I'm using this a lot, but they start off really well with that. They have David and Ellie sit down at the fire for a talk, and it's like, all right, David doesn't seem like a bad person. It's just, they're angry with Joel because he killed one of their people, right? And there's always that thought in the back of your mind. It's like, well, if you were good, why did you immediately start attacking first? But you think about it, well, if they're hungry and starving, it makes you do shit you wouldn't normally do necessarily. And so they're probably, like, hey, we don't know if we can trust this person. We're just going to, try to attack first and then let it be. But then slowly, like, you get that one scene of him slapping that girl, and it's like, okay, there's more to this shit. And then it just continues to reveal and reveal and reveal. And it's like, okay, David at the very least is not a good person at all.
No, he's not. He's not. Like, the show does better in like making you
want to believe him. You want to be like, okay, I like, there's a thought in the back of the mind where maybe you're not a horrible person, but I'm still like, you want to believe him. You're like, kind of there with him. Like, I get you, I understand you, but there's just that little thought of something's not right. And then it's revealed, and that little thought becomes the main thought, and you're like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah,
it's a cannibal cult.
Summed it up perfectly. So again, in the game, I don't keep in mind, though, listeners and you, Wolf, that it has been a while since I've legit played the game, like a full playthrough. But sadly, I'm a busy man. But I remember that in the game they don't go that deep into David. That some of it was added for the show, if I remember correctly. But I did go back to some of the scenes, and like the final fight, like when Ellie escapes her cell and her fight in the bar with David. That's almost 1-to-1 like the game, and it was so great to see, because when I played that part, I was on the edge of my seat. I was gripping the controller hard. It was tense. And I remember after I even finished that part, I'm like, oh my God, I need a break. I can't do this. And maybe it's a good thing I took a break because of the session after I beat the game. But regardless of the fact, so I just remember that, and I was so looking forward to seeing how they would do this one time. But at the same time, I'm like, don't screw this up, and they didn't. and even more when Joel afterwards finds Ellie and is like, "I got you, baby girl." That's like right in the feels, right in the feels.
Mm.
Ah,
I'm going to say though, for
mm-hmm.
me at least, as kind of like I've only experienced with the show, and again, we talked about this a little bit before, how Bill and Frank's story was different in the game compared to what is in the show.
So we're
I
doing this
think,
now.
yeah, I mean, I have to, man. Episode 3, I think, kind of stole the show for
Yeah,
me.
honestly,
Like, I
I
didn't expect,
as
like,
someone
it
who played the
doesn't mean
game,
much to the story and of Joel and Ellie overall, but it kind of stole the show from me.
no,
Like,
like
that
listen,
hit,
as someone who
man.
played the game, agreed. It's if not the best episode, it's one of the best. It doesn't do much in terms of the overall story, yeah, but
Like,
fuck, man,
it
they
does so
actually did.
much. Yeah, it does
Yeah,
so much for those characters.
yeah, I felt so much for because again, Frank is an odd character is just mentioned, and Bill is just gonna there. Yeah, all right, here's my car. Fuck off. And they gave them such a beautiful story.
Mm.
Such eh, honestly, you know how back with the Cuphead show in season 3 we said that there was the Christmas special that can just exist on its own. You don't need the rest of the show for it. You can just watch this every Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to watch this every Valentine's.
Yeah, you could genuinely, this can stand by itself to a large degree, because for the most part it's just Bill and Frank, and it's
Yeah,
just their story of the two of them falling in love and just living their
their
lives in the
life.
apocalypse. Yeah.
The life, like I when I watched this with my friend, she was the entire thing. Please don't have a stupid fight. Please don't have a stupid fight. And like she said, the scene with the the straw with the strawberries, with the strawberry garden that he made
Mm.
for him. This was so good.
And but even
So
then, like, they do have a little bit of a stupid fight, and it's just about painting shit and making shit look nice, and it's
but
like,
that's the thing.
that's
They
like,
have the stupid
it's
fight.
dumb, but it works, right?
Yeah, but for one, the actors made it believable.
Mm.
First of all, but two, it's not like they break up because of that fight. It
Yeah.
doesn't break down. They stand strong and they communicate, and it was
Mm-hmm.
such a beautiful friend relationship. And then you get the ultimate kicker, which honestly, this is the one part that my friend isn't really happy about, but what can you do is that they both die.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean,
And like,
I even
but
that
it's
though, like, I
so,
get some people
uh,
may not have wanted that to be the case after getting to know these characters like that, but it's just, that's like this universe, right? It's harsh. It's not
it,
easy.
it's not only that, but you know what? If we had to get rid of those characters after this one episode, then you know what? I'm happy. I'm happy with the fact that they died together and
Mm-hmm.
still in love, and not that one had to kill the other or something like that. Because that's kind of what the game. That's kind of the implications the game might leave you with.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I
Uh,
think it's also really good because, right, like, you still get to see, like, they tried, right? Because I believe it's Frank. Yeah, like,
yeah.
there's that terminal illness, right, where it's probably
Mhm.
something to do with like some type of muscular atrophy disease, right? Something like that. And it's just, they're trying, right? They try to make that work, but they're both getting old, and he doesn't want to be that burden anymore, but Bill doesn't want to have him go and not go without him, and live
Mhm.
without him for any amount of time. Like, I love the, him coming out and saying, like, hey, I'm fulfilled. I've lived the life I wanted to live now. So I'm happy
Mhm.
with this being the end. It's great. Just all of episode 3 is
Yeah.
so good.
Well,
Like,
it's
holy shit. I did not come into this show expecting that, but so glad I got it.
nobody did. I think that's one of the reasons why this episode sticks out to people so
Mm.
much. Nobody expected this. Nobody expected it to be this good. This, and for this to steal the show as well. Like, who would have thought?
But I will say, right, even with this being so good, and in my opinion, again, stealing the show, it's still, you don't feel like anything that comes after it is bad by any means. Like everything that comes after, because this is episode 3, you still have, I believe, 6 episodes left after that. And like all 6 of those episodes, for the most part, I would say feel fairly strong all throughout.
I will say one of the things I was worried about. I'm sorry for forgetting the names, but when Joel and Ellie come across the two brothers.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, for one, the little brother is not deaf in the game. And it's something they talked about, that the reason they made him deaf in the show is because they felt like, for having those characters on they didn't want to have like another Joel and Ellie. So making the kid deaf was kind of their way of differentiating the two, which fair, I suppose. It's still nice.
It works.
And so because in the original game, this is one of the moments that broke me the most. And I'll tell you, after the kid is turning, and his brother shoots him, and then afterwards he shoots himself, right? So in the show, you actually see Joel and Ellie bury them and pay respects and saying goodbye and everything. In the game, the brother shoots himself, cut to black, and then you're in the next part of the game where Joel and Ellie are arriving at Tommy's warehouse.
Ah.
Why did I call it warehouse? Like Tommy's hideout.
Yeah.
My bad. And so I was so ready for them to do the same thing, like that you just see the brother showing cut credits, but they gave them that little farewell moment, which I'll be honest with you, I have such mixed feelings about, because I'm happy that they gave them a bit more of a goodbye. It feels more complete that way. But that cut in the original game got me so hard that I have no idea which way I prefer it.
That's interesting though, because again, like I guess it's the game's way of showing, like, hey, this is a hard world as well. We don't have the time for respect and things like that. But then I think the show gives you other ways to show that this is a hard world, right? Like with Bill and Frank earlier, right?
Yeah, and I also think this is just the difference between mediums showing, because in the game, after this happens, you can just save, stop the game, go do something else, and by that point you kind of come to your own terms regarding these characters. But in a show, you need something a bit more conclusive for an episode, because you do have a formula you need to keep up with, right? And you need to have like that quiet bit before we cut to the credits.
Yeah. No,
So I think it was just a moment of this is the different mediums doing their thing. But whichever you prefer, honestly, it's kind of up for debate. I think this is still one part that I can't tell you if I prefer it in the game or in the show. It's just the difference.
Oh, I am curious. I did want to ask you one thing. Like the big infected that comes out in episode 5, right? Like the big dude who just rips people in half, essentially. Is that a thing in the game? I'm very curious.
I tell you what, I know this is a thing in The Last of Us 2. I don't think it's in the first one. Not that I recall, anyway.
Okay, no, that's fair. Because I was very curious of that, because that seems like they're doing a thing of like, oh, there's different types of infected sort of deal, right? Like, you see from other shows.
Yeah, so that big one, if I remember right, it doesn't come in until the sequel, and fuck that fight. If I may quote a YouTuber named Cherai5, fuck this fight, fuck this fight, fuck this fight, fuck this fight.
What did something else I'm actually curious to ask you? What did you think of the show's portrayal of the clickers? Because I know in the game it's a little bit different. In so much as like I think like that clicking sound is very like stuck in people's minds somewhat after the first game.
It is. Okay, listen, true story. Okay, we're talking. This was after the Left Behind. The episode, the flashback episode with Ellie and Riley, right? That was a DLC released for the game a few
Oh,
months after.
neat.
But the thing is that there was a time after the game was released. I don't remember exactly when, but it was after the game was it was after the game was released, and I happened to I need to. There's this mall that also connects to a bus station, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had just needed to be at that mall really early in the morning because I need to take a bus.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in that station, okay? It's like really early in the morning. The sun isn't even out yet. The entire mall is freaking dead, all right? Nobody's there. So I think of Ellie and Riley in that mall. I think about that, and suddenly, out of nowhere, there was this there was like maybe a door creaking or something. So I hear that, and I literally jumped in my place. I was like, this is how much the clicker sound can terrify you.
No, it's
Okay.
fair.
That was a listen. It's a good thing I wasn't in a pizzeria. Otherwise, an animatronic might have jumped at me. But that was. Last of Us is better than FNAF. Fight me. By the way, you know
No,
something.
you're
I
right.
cannot take it back because we got fucking Shaggy in the FNAF movie.
I don't know what to think about that one.
I know exactly what to think. It's that I'm in that movie day one, even though I don't care for that franchise.
Fair enough.
Like, sorry, Scoop, we have to come out of this kid. Okay, that was too much out of topic. Back to Last of Us. So for the clickers, I'll tell you what, it's weird because their screams, the way they act and everything, that's exactly like the game.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that makes you terrified of them, which is I can't replicate that. You can't. But the clicking thing, because there's the clicking thing that, not necessarily how they sound when they come at you, but just the sounds in general. They have the kind of like a clock ticking. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's not in the show. And again, it's one of those things that's kind of, I would argue, different mediums, because in the game, obviously, you need to have them in every situation because you need an obstacle, you need an enemy. Mario needs his Goombas, Sonic needs his Badniks. You need an enemy to get in your way. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
And
And the
in the
clickers kind of
show,
serve that purpose, right? In the
yeah,
game,
and
at least.
the clickers are though. This is the clickers' purpose in the game. But now you have this show, and yeah, they're a threat, definitely. But you can't overuse them as well, because in the show, the fear is more: when are you going to see them? When are they gonna attack? And in the game, the threat is: I hope I'm ready to take on them when they show up next, because it's gonna be in the very next room, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I understand that.
So when it comes to the clickers, I think they use them sparingly and well enough. I would probably try and use them a bit more in some scenarios, but overall, I think they did them fine.
That's fair. There you go. Now you've heard it.
I hate you because I literally jumped in.
I thought you might. I was waiting for a good, quiet moment.
Thankfully, I'm in my room, but not in
But
that
yeah, like,
freaking mall again. But
that's the
holy
sound we're
shit.
talking about for the audience who didn't know. It's a great sound. They do very well at that. That's one of the things I did know about the games, like hearing that sound,
And you
because
see,
I remember
that
a lot of
sound,
people talking about that, right?
yeah, so you see, that sound, it works well when you are entering a room and you're like, shit, I'm low on ammo.
Because
Oh,
the game
shit.
like keeps all that stuff very dark and tries to hide them and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah, because again, they are your obstacles. They are the things you need to avoid. In a show, you don't need to rely on that much.
Mm-hmm.
It's more on when those things arrive. So that sound isn't. Yeah, I think they do use it in episode 2 every once in a while because they do
Mm-hmm.
sneak around in that, but
Mm-hmm.
mostly. Another thing I want to say, as much as I have my grievances with The Last of Us 2, I was happy to see, Tommy's neighborhood, the place he's running. And because then you realized, oh, right, we have The Last of Us 2 now. We actually show how this community functions. We actually see how these people live. Why not actually put us in the adaptation? And I
Mm-hmm.
was really, this again, it's one of those, because we know what we did now, we got to learn as the people behind the game on what exactly is going on there. We can kind of put that in, and of course there's like this, everyone pointed out that there's that girl looking at Ellie like that. Yeah, this is obviously a reference to Dina, her girlfriend from the second game. So
No.
what do you mean, no? What are
I'm
you
just like, it
arguing?
wasn't I'm like saying like, oh no, that wasn't obvious at all.
Actually, I wonder, what did you think going completely blind that the point of her was?
I didn't like I kind of knew that Ellie was, gay and everything, or bi, or whatever she is.
She's lesbian.
Lesbian. Okay, she's
She's
lesbian. All right. So I knew she was, and I didn't know the story of everything about her from the first game, as I said, but I did know she had like a girlfriend in the second game. And I
okay.
kind of figured, seeing that's probably
Actually,
something they're
wait.
hinting at.
Now that I remember, I just remembered.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you and I see the E3 presentation with her and Dina?
Mm-mm. I don't think so. Maybe.
I'm pretty sure it was with you. I
Yeah, we might
remember
have watched
because
that
they ended.
together. I don't remember.
I remember it was with you. Holy shit!
See, I think I knew of that, but yeah, like seeing that, I kind of figured, okay, they're doing a thing of, she's probably a little bit interested but shy, and maybe they'll get back to that later in another season or something like that. So it wasn't surprising to me. But speaking of Ellie and her relationships, what did you think of her and Riley, I believe it is?
So I'll say this. Out of all the Tess also, her actress wasn't really feeling it for me, but
Mm.
Riley is the one actress where I feel like she doesn't even come close to matching the original.
Mm. You think that's
And
just because she didn't have enough time, or
no,
because
no,
she's not
no,
in it for
just
very long?
it's neither. It's because because let's say she has not counting gameplay, she has around the same amount of screen time as Riley in the game.
Mm.
Because I should make it clear, the Left Behind, it's also the name of the episode, but in the original game, that's DLC. That came out a few months after the game.
Yeah.
So Riley is not in the game for long. Actually, before that DLC, the only time you really hear about her is, or see her for that matter, is through prequel comics.
Mm.
But there was just, and for the record, no insult to the actress. I'm sure she's a lovely person, and I'm sure she's a great actress. She just didn't fit this role for me. And for one, she's like taller than Bella Ramsey by a bit, and it looks super off for some. I don't know. And it's not just that she's taller than her; she's also buffer than her. Like, they don't feel someone is overpowered. You get what I mean?
Well, I think Storm Reed is older than Bella
Bella
Ramsey
Ramsey.
as well, if I'm not mistaken.
For the record, it doesn't necessarily. It's not that necessarily
Like
that she's
as yeah,
older.
like
It's just that.
actors and like as actresses, right? Like one's older than the other, I
Yeah.
believe.
But it's not just the fact that they're older.
Mm-hmm.
There's no problem with that. It's just that she looks too off to be Ellie's partner. You get what I mean? She looks a bit. And again, I'm sure she's a lovely actress and she's doing well here. I just just not the
I'm
right
wrong.
cast.
They are the same age.
Oh, well, fuck you. Anyway.
Fuck me, yeah. I'm completely wrong. They are the same age. I thought they were a different age. Ignore me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Regardless of
regardless,
that,
it's not the
though.
issue. The actress still just doesn't fill the role for you in the same way. I get that. It can
Yeah.
happen.
But otherwise, they kind of hit the same notes. One difference that I'm on and off about is in the game they come across this fighting game that's a machine that's out of commission. So what happens is that Ellie closes her eyes and Riley's kind of feeding her the cues, and you're like controlling Ellie, controlling the game. Technically, you don't see anything, but it's like done in a really creative way. And in the show, that you just see them playing an arcade cabinet that works fine.
Mhm.
Also, the Mortal Kombat movie is on HBO Max. Apparently, because
Go
this is why
watch
they
it.
put Mortal
If it's the
Kombat in
old
there.
one, it's great.
I haven't seen it actually. I'm
They're
too.
terrible B movies, but I love them.
Oh no, I'm talking about the new one,
Oh,
not
the
the
new
old
one. The
one.
new one's actually maybe good.
I haven't seen it. The two older ones I've seen, and I'm regretting it. But
I love them, but they're terrible. The older ones. Now the newer one, I can't say. I don't
No,
remember.
but the thing is, because the new one came out during that time where they still kind of did, streaming only releases,
Mm.
because of COVID and everything. So, so I think so I was joking with the fan that hey, it's Mortal Kombat. We have the movie on our streaming service. Go watch it. So that. And that's the only reason they put it in there. But for the record, it was nice. It was nice to see. Mortal Kombat is a great game. But the point is, though, in the original, Riley kind of feeds Ellie an imaginary game that she kind of needs to follow her instructions. But then in the show, both of them are playing multiplayer in a walk-in cabinet. So I kind of prefer it where it's Riley giving her the thing. It builds more of a connection, I feel, that Ellie can imagine the game just based on instructions rather than them just playing a game. So, eh, minor thing. And like I said, again, when they do the kiss scene, they change their sides in the frame. So I'm sorry, ruined forever. 0 out of 10.
Yeah, no, it's just terrible.
Jokes
Absolutely
aside,
terrible.
though, this was done well, and it was also very loyal to how it happens in the game. Like when Ellie tells her "Don't go," Riley throws away the Firefly necklace. Ellie kisses her, goes sorry. Riley says, "For what?" And then the problems start. Right?
I think it's interesting to note too that Left Behind is the episode where we see a bunch of this, and Neil Druckmann is the creator of the game, and he's the one who wrote for episode 7
Yeah.
for Left Behind.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of interesting as well, because Neil Druckmann he helped on the writing, but for the most part, it's
He's
Craig
like one of
Mazin.
they create him for like being a co-creator of the
Yeah.
show too. Like it's not like he's not like a consultant or anything. He's a showrunner for all intents and purposes.
He also, it's also interesting because he directed episode 2, the episode where they do the stuff back in Indonesia as well. Like it's interesting to see which episodes he did and didn't work on. In the role he filled in, because I think you can tell his connection to the show as well and how he wanted to be
And you
more
can kind of
involved.
tell he kind of has a directing style too. You can tell from the games because and also he directed Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy, and you can tell that they're in a different tone compared to the other three. Not to say that it's bad. I love Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy. It's just that the guy has a style, kinda.
No, fair, very fair. I guess kind of
So
getting into it, talking about the end. Joel rescuing Ellie and everything with that.
okay, let's talk about that. Okay, for the record, to give the idea, Joel's task was to transfer Ellie to the Fireflies so that they could experiment on her and find a cure for the disease, because she's immune to the virus. She's been bitten the same night as Riley, and she hasn't turned. She's immune. Now, so he needs to transfer there so that they could find a cure for it. So initially, she's just his job. He doesn't really care about her. But the more they travel, she's like what she's becoming like a daughter for him, and he's kind of a father figure to her.
They form a bond. They start to care about one another.
Indeed,
Joel's old man heart becomes a little bit less cold.
Exactly.
I get the feeling.
Something. I was about to say something that will never happen to you, but
no, never.
Anywho, so and now once they get to the Fireflies, he realizes that there's a good chance Sally would die if they go through the operation. So he breaks through. So he's breaking to the operation room. By the way, Laura Bailey, who plays Abby in The Last of Us 2, is one of the doctors for some reason.
Is she? Wow, I did not know that at all.
I only know they mentioned this on Facebook, on Twitter. Sorry, and it's like that's so freaking random. Not to describe Laura Bailey. Laura Bailey is a great voice actor.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you saw or played something in your life, you most likely heard her voice as something.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anywho, back to this. There is kind of like this moral dilemma of, do I say it, in a sense, kind of a trolley problem situation of. You can either save the many, and you can sacrifice the few, and save the many. But the few is a person that you really care about.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you do in that situation? And of course, Joel goes with saving Ellie. Marlene tries to stop him, tells him you can save her. Blah blah blah. Joel shoots her, and he doesn't, and he kills her completely because he knows that. Marlene would only come after Ellie if he lets her go. And afterwards, when Ellie wakes up in the car, Joel tells her, turns out that there are a bunch of people like you, you're not that special, and he takes her to live with Tommy in their hideout. And then both the game and the show end with Ellie asking Joel to swear to her that what he said is true. He swears to her. She says, okay, cut.
Mm.
So let me ask you, what do you think about this?
I personally liked it. I mean, again, right? Like, it's one of those things of some people might disagree with it, because like, hey, Ellie was okay with this idea, and it would save everyone, right? And that Joel's being selfish, and I get that, and some people aren't going to like it because of that. I like it because it feels human from Joel, right? He doesn't want to lose the next person he's found a connection with. He wants to keep that person around, and I get that, and I understand that. It feels like a very human thing, right? Of, well, fuck the world. I don't give a shit. I want me and mine, and I want to protect me and mine, and I get that, and I'm sure it's very polarizing for people in many different ways, but I enjoyed it. I liked it.
So polarizing is the best way to put it, and this is one of those things that would either turn you on or off The Last of Us, because Joel isn't the protagonist you necessarily seem to want to like.
Well, I mean, the entire show, I think the one issue I would say I might have with it, and I don't know if the game does a better job of portraying this or not, is throughout the show, we're told that Joel's not a good person. In this new world and the shit he's done, like, you're given a few, like, he does kill people, but for the most part, it's people who was trying to kill him and Ellie first. So it always feels like, he's just defending himself. So you feel better about accepting him killing people, right? But throughout the show, you're given like little glimpses or, tidbits about his past where, no, that wasn't all at this point. Like the point where they choose to try and run over that guy in the truck because Joel knew it was an ambush. And Ellie asked him, like, hey, how did you know it was an ambush? And Joel, like, reveals to her, I've been on both sides.
Yeah,
I've done the ambushing, and I've been been a part of the ambush, right? Like,
totally.
he's
Yes.
been on both sides of it, so he's killed innocent people. But you're never shown anything. You're just given these little tidbits and you're told it. And I can
Mhm.
understand if you kind of forget that or don't pay as much attention to it, and you start to see, oh, like, Joel's a decent person. He's maybe not like, everything in this world is hard, and you have to be hard in order to survive, right? You have to harden your heart a little bit to a lot of things that you wouldn't normally do if you want to be able to survive in a world like this. And
Mhm.
I think for a lot of people, right, they'll get attached to Joel in that way. It's like, oh, he's just defending himself. He's just, doing the thing he would need to do in order to keep himself and Ellie alive. But then you see this, and then that's when it kind of all hits like, no, Joel's an asshole too. Like, he didn't have to do that, but he did. So
Mhm.
I get if it's polarizing to a lot of people, but I like the fact that it's polarizing personally.
No, I enjoy that fact too. But this is what I mean with, like, it actually manages to be deep without trying to be deep. It gives you what
Mm-hmm.
you need. You draw your own conclusions. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always have this argument when people are trying to be deep with something in media, then they just talk about it so much to the point of I don't care about your messaging anymore. But here they give you what you need, and it's like draw your own conclusions. You like Joel, you don't like him. This is who this person is, and and I know this can be a deal breaker, and I've seen people that this is a deal breaker to them, that the main character is not likable to them. But one, I think Joe makes up for it because you get where he's coming from. His daughter was murdered by a police officer. You wouldn't be the same. You wouldn't be you know, a law-obeying citizen if that was the case. You would do some shady stuff afterwards too, because that would break you.
Mm.
So I don't. Like in the side of do you like Joel or not? Like, I like Joel be as a
He's human.
protagonist.
He's human.
Yeah, like,
He's a
but I
human
also,
making human choices, right? At least that's the way it feels to me.
yeah,
Because not
and
everyone would make the
now when
choice
it
of,
comes
no,
to,
I'll let this person die, this person that I care about, because it's going to save everyone. Not everyone can make that
Mhm,
choice, and that's
yeah,
fair.
and now, uh, so let's say in terms of the moral choice at the end of the game and show, because the game and the show do it the same way basically. It's not that different. I totally get Joe's side. I don't think it's the right choice necessarily,
Hmm.
but man, if only we would have gotten a sequel that would actually delve into this problem. Oh wait, we did, but they shoved it to the sidelines.
Yeah, I'm curious to ask. I guess.
We'll get there. We'll
Oh,
get there.
okay.
We'll
Okay,
get
we'll
there. I
get
just
there.
want there is one thing I want to say about this finale, in both the game and the show. And this is something my friend pointed out when we watched it.
Hmm.
Basically, the thing they need is in Ellie's brain.
Hmm.
I want to bring attention to the fact that brain surgeries have been going on for a while, and most of them end up with the patient surviving and having a good life rather than the patient dying. I know that the risk is always there, but if you take that little medical fact into account, it kind of breaks everything.
Yeah, I think the idea, right, is that they're going to completely take out her entire brain and like not
Yeah.
leave her with anything is the
Yeah,
idea. But it's like you
and
don't
that's
have
the
to
thing.
do that though. You could
Yeah,
take like
that,
small pieces and it probably not kill her at all.
this is one problem that I would say it's not really a major problem, and you can also say that because they need to make a vaccine out of this, then it becomes a bit more complicated, right? You can fill in the blanks, but the
Hmm.
point is, this could have been such an easy fix if you would have just wrote in if they just need to take out the brain entirely, if actually requiring the piece for longer than so and so time could be dangerous. If there was more of a reason for Joel to worry, because as is, Joel is just kind of worried about a daughter going into a surgery, and the surgeons are just being assholes by not telling him what the surgery actually is.
Yeah, and then his response to that is, all right, everybody gonna die now.
Yeah.
That's like a bit much there. Didn't need to do that, but okay.
Yeah.
In that regard, I get it. I guess like maybe they could have been a little bit more clear, like, oh hey, they mentioned in the show, right? And I guess they do in the game as well, that like, hey, cordyceps grows in the brain. And maybe by trying to take even a small portion of the cordyceps, it would kill her. Even if they're not intending to, by trying to take something from the cordyceps in her brain, potentially, it would kill her. And that's like the thing that Joel's aware of that he doesn't want to have happen, because he knows it'll kill her. They could have been more clear on that in some way, maybe. Like just say something of, if cordyceps grows in the brain, if you mess with that, you'll kill her. Just something simple like that, right? Just a little small addendum that, okay, I get your reaction now, right? And whether I agree with it or not, I can at least understand it. And that's probably like the weakest part of it, is that you get it, you can understand it, but it feels flawed in so much as the game and the story itself needed this because they wanted to have this moment, right, at the end.
Right.
That's probably like the weakest part of it. I would agree.
But for the record, it doesn't break the show or anything. It's just when
break the game either.
Somebody
doesn't break the story, right? Like
it doesn't.
Works. It just feels
it still works, and again,
if you think about it.
Yeah, and it's also something that you can kind of make up the pieces in your mind. It's not something that it's not like a plot hole necessarily. It's just something that's not properly explained. But at the same time, I just thought it's an interesting thing to bring up.
No, that's fair. Now, I am curious to ask you, right? I guess kind of spoilers for the second game a little bit here, but
okay. So, is there, before we go into that, is there anything else you want to say about season 1 before we move on? Because this is like an
I don't think so. Like, I really enjoyed it, and I feel like if you're a fan of the game, you'll love this. And even if you're not a fan of the game, I think you'll still love this. It's really well
done. Agreed. Definitely. Like, obviously, if you play the game and seen the show, you most likely listen to all of this. But if you avoided the second game for whatever reason and you don't want any spoilers because you want to play it for yourself, or if you're waiting for whenever that adaptation comes out, then close this now, because I'm gonna give Wolf some crash course on the second game. So spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2 in 3, 2, 1. Now I can say Joel dies, but all right.
And it's Marlene that kills him. She comes back.
No, no. It doesn't go that dumb.
No.
So I guess the first thing you probably want to ask me is what they do with the idea of Joel's lie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so when the game literally begins with Joel only confiding in Tommy about his lie. And Tommy just basically tells them, listen, this is something you're gonna have to take to the grave. Like, you don't tell anyone, you keep it to yourself, you never tell Ellie. But it just so happens that a few years after the fact, when Ellie's kind of becoming a bit more obsessive to try and find other people like her, Joel eventually outs the truth. Because she's starting to get suspected because she's starting to suspect that he lied to her, and eventually he has no choice but to confirm it. And she doesn't take it lightly.
I mean, as she wouldn't. That's completely fair. I do have one question though, because in the show, the way Marlene talks about it, they make it sound like they didn't tell Ellie that she was going to die. Is that the same in the game?
It's more than it's more than not necessarily that they didn't tell Ellie, just that Ellie doesn't care. She knows that if she can help, she wants to help.
Okay, so I'm curious then, because the show portrays it like, hey, she's under, she doesn't know, it's going to be, painless and easy for her. She doesn't, and she didn't know that she was going to die. I'm curious then what the show might do, because the show took it like she didn't know she was going to die. And I feel like that kind of changes things, because I feel like, Ellie deserved to know whether or not this would
Keep
kill
in
her or
mind,
not, right?
I'm also going by memory,
This is
but
true.
considering in both the show and the game, she's having a major survival's guilt over the idea, because she saw Riley die, she saw Tess die, so many people around her died, and because of this thing that she can fix. So,
Still yet, though, I think,
if she's the only one who could
that
have
might
done
be
it,
a slightly better change, in that, at least in Joel's defense, this would have killed you. You didn't know this, and you deserve to know that it would have killed you. I think that's at least a step in a better direction, maybe, depending on where they go with it. But we'll see.
Yeah.
But continue on.
But basically, so Ellie doesn't take it. Ellie doesn't take it well that Joe lied to her. Yeah, you can't really blame her for this, right? And the last conversation she has with him before he's killed in front of her eyes is that she tells them that she might get why he did it, but she'll probably never forgive him. And that's it. Out of the 40 plus hours of game that The Last of Us Part 2 can be, this is all you get. This is all comes down to like a tenth of the entire game. And also, for the record, I just told you this. In the game, it's also presented in non-chronological order. Like a lot of the stuff I told you is just flashbacks. So
you get
it's
it
not
like over time, right?
Yeah, you get it. Actually, when I told the conversation where Ellie tells Joel that she'll never forgive him, that's like the ending. This is after you've done the last bits of gameplay.
Yeah. That seems like it's not great.
And for the record, I know that there are people out there who really like The Last of Us 2 story, and for the record, if you like it, by all means, I can see why. But in my opinion, it focuses on the wrong stuff. It's way too bloated. There are so many things that don't make sense in terms of the message they're trying to go with. And honestly, I don't even mind that Joel dies. Honestly, I kind of expected it from the trailers. The way the trailers were presented, I was expecting him to.
Yeah, but like father figure / mentor figure, it kind of makes sense at some point that he would pass.
Yeah, because people were also, kind of said that, he dies by getting beaten up, that he has such a gory death, and like he's not going out like a hero or something, that it's disrespectful for him. But it's like, that's the point of the franchise, though.
Yeah,
that life sucks.
That's the point of his character too. That he kind of gets what he had coming to him for a long time, right? Even if he was trying to be a better person.
And the other thing, Abby, the woman who does end up killing him, and Ellie's on the hunt for. We find out that the doctor, one of the doctors Joel shot in the original game and now show, is Abby's father. So this is a personal grudge she's holding against them. Now, when it comes to anything else you want to know about The Last of Us Part 2, so that
I think that's enough for now, I would say.
So
I can't think of anything, at least.
Whenever we do a show that there's another season coming at some point and stuff, I do want to talk about in terms of a season 2. I've seen a lot of people kind of pray and hope that with all the changes and the additions they made to this season, that maybe there's a good chance they'll fix the second game story in the next season. And Neil Druckmann did come out and say, we won't change anything major. I don't care about the haters. No, he didn't say it exactly like that, but when they asked him about his opinion about the people who don't like the game, he basically said, I don't care. One, dude, I respect that you have the balls to come out and say this is my game, this was my vision, and if you don't like it, you're wrong. But also, you can't necessarily say that you don't care about feedback. And I'm sorry, from every way you're looking at this, The Last of Us 2 is a missed potential. I get that it's like doing new things in terms of storytelling in video games, but if you are just doing, but it's style over substance at the end of the day.
Uh-huh.
And especially if the game becomes tiring to play, and I just feel and I get that The Last of Us is kind of a depressing franchise, right? But if I am literally feel empty after finishing a game, and I'm just angry while playing it, then the game is probably doing something wrong.
Agreed. Agreed.
But okay, that and for the record, The Last of Us 2 isn't terrible. It's just disappointing.
That's fair.
Now, when it comes, but the one thing I want to say, when it comes to the show, what they did mention that it will take them a few years to adapt The Last of Us 2, which is fair considering there are a lot of flashbacks in that game. And the main game it takes place 4 years after the original, so obviously they can't do this right now, right?
Yeah.
So with all that being said, we also kind of come to one with one of those things where they could totally make in between seasons woke. They could, because one of the problems I and some other people had about the second game is that the second game feels like there's too much in it, and not only that, there's like a part of the story missing. That if it were a third game, it would have worked if there was another game to bridge the two, but there isn't.
Yeah.
So they could totally use that. They can fix something by actually taking maybe a season or two until they start adapting The Last of Us 2.
That's fair. Is there anything in particular you would like to see from that potentially?
Can you repeat that? You cut off a bit.
Oh, is there anything you would like to potentially see from that, like from the show, in regards to something they might fix or what they might add, in order to help bridge the gap, maybe?
So in terms of in terms of the end, I would probably say just focus more on the fact that Joel lied to Ellie and her reaction to his lie. Focus, give me more focus on that. Maybe establish Abby as like a side character or something. Give more build up to the events. Don't just throw all those events at me.
That's fair.
Now, whether or not they'll do it, we'll have to wait and see, and we'll be smarter once season 2 actually comes out. It is confirmed. We know that the season 2 is happening. It's just a matter of let's see what they do with it.
Well, I guess one other question I'd have is, how do you think you would feel if they just, followed season 2 with, like, in a similar way they did with season 1, with changing like a little bit here or there, but for the most part keeping it the same? Do you think you would enjoy it still, or do you think it would still leave a bad taste in your mouth?
It's hard to say because I can't tell you exactly what they would do, right? Let's assume they just do the parts that are the Ellie and Joel flashbacks that take place as closer to the original's ending as possible, okay?
Yeah.
Let's assume we are only doing those flashbacks. Okay? Let's assume we are only doing those flashbacks and everything else is new material added to keep the story going.
Yeah.
That, I think, would be the ideal season 2 for me. Now, if let's assume that season 2 is going to be just just the Abby side, for example. That would be a problem because I want to see Joel and Ellie. Uh,
Mm,
uh, that being said, though, giving Abby more establishment in season 2 as like another fracture or something, or seeing her, learning the truth and maybe planning a revenge, that could work. That could work. That could be an interesting setup.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's their job. So let's hope for the best.
Fair enough.
Anything? What do you want to hear for?
What do
What
I
do you want
want?
to see from season
I
2?
mean, based solely off just the show, I would like to see, as we've talked a little bit about, I would like to see more. I would like to see, Joel's lie come back and that be a prominent thing between him and Ellie, right? I think it'd be interesting to see a little bit of, Ellie growing up and him teaching her a bit more and being a bit more of that father figure to her, right? And like get Tommy involved in on that and just, see the community kind of grow up and like establish that place more, since that seems to be where they're going to be at for a while. And just like get some of that, of like those in between years, quote unquote, right? And then like get into more of the show proper.
All right.
As far as like, you know, that's probably the one thing that I'm curious of, because as far as the show goes, if they do come back for a season 2, what like what would be the goal? What would be the point? Like it's hard to do a show of, hey, we're just out here to survive now. I'm not sure I would find that as interesting or as enjoyable, right? And you kind of need that antagonist in a way to like carry the show forward, as like, hey, the first season, right, has the goal of we're trying to get here. We're trying to get Ellie from point A to point B so we can quote
Right.
unquote save the world. But
Mhm.
for season 2, right, we've done that. We don't need to get Ellie from point A to point B anymore. So kind of what would the goal be? Just to survive? I'm not sure that would be as enjoyable per se. I don't think it would be
That is an interesting
bad,
point of view.
but in a video game, right, they you can kind of get past that a little bit, because in a video game, you're playing the character, so your goal as the player is to survive and not die, right? You can kind of get past that hump of that kind of issue of just needing to survive, because that's the game mechanic, I guess you would say. In a show, you don't have that reliance, so you kind of need the characters to be moving towards something or be doing something. And just watching people survive in a fictional world, while not bad, we do have The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead still had the characters moving towards something. They had their goals, right? What would be the goal for Joel and Ellie other than to survive? That'd be the one thing that I'm curious. I'd be curious of what their goal ends up being. I assume like they have an idea with that in regards to Abby or something, but I'd have to see it. But yeah, I would like to see them do something with that. That's more than just them surviving personally. And I figure they will, but I can't think of anything myself personally. But I'm not a writer, so who knows?
It's one of those. I guess we'll have to wait and see what they actually do with it, and
Mm.
the time would come, I suppose, whenever the time comes, we'll be here.
I suppose, is there any like rumors or murmurings of a third game in the series, or no?
There are talks, nothing, because they apparently. I know that there were talks. I'm not sure if it's confirmed or not anymore. That there's going to be like just a multiplayer Last of Us game. Nothing, no story.
Mm.
And
Not interested.
when they and recently, like they were asked about if there's going to be a Last of Us 3, and all Naughty Dog said is like, we are working on something, but they didn't specify.
That's fair. Would you
I
be interested in a third game, like
I
something that maybe explores the world with different characters, or would you want to go back to Ellie potentially?
I'll tell you what, considering how The Last of Us 2 ends, which is Ellie losing everything,
Ah,
I'm not sure what else there's to do with it, but if they have an idea that's self-contained and not goes against its own point, I'd like to see where this goes.
fair enough. Fair enough.
I will say though, I hope that there's a Last of Us 3. So that way, the fourth game could be a racing game, and it would be called The Fast of Us.
You're fucking awful.
It's I
all
assume
about
you know
family,
that.
HC.
I assume is wait. Let me. Did you get the reference or not?
No, I get it, and I hate it.
Why? Okay, so what's the reference?
I don't know. I still hate it.
You just told me you got the reference.
I lied.
And I'm out of the family. Okay, but basically, Naughty Dog, they created Crash Bandicoot.
Oh,
3
okay.
platformers, racing game. Then Jack and Daxter, 3 games, racing game. Uncharted, they made an actual Uncharted 4, but there was a driving in it, so So the joke is they need a Last of Us trilogy and then make a kart racer.
Oh,
And it would be called The Fast of Us.
And it's all about family at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Now
you're out of the family. Don't turn Last of Us into the fucking Fast and Furious.
The Last of Us though already has family ties, man. It's all about family. They have already got the theme.
You
already
realize
there.
that when you said family ties, I was thinking about the sitcom for a second.
The Last of Us is already a part of the Fast and the Furious franchise. You just don't know it yet.
No, it's not. Oh god,
the Fast and the Furious multiverse, HC. It's all connected at the end of the day. We don't know it yet, but Vin Diesel is in everything.
And my question is, what is The Rock gonna be?
He can play one of the infected. He's a big tree infected.
Sure, let's go with that. Anyway, anything else about The Last of Us?
No, I'm interested in a season 2. I want to see more of this.
I'm interested to see how they're gonna adapt the game too, and if they are gonna make it better by giving it more time, then by all means. And if not, then I won't be shocked, sadly. But for season 1, I enjoyed what I got.
Fair.
So with that said, that's all for this episode of the Outcast. We hope you enjoyed it. What are your thoughts about The Last of Us? Show, game, whatever. You can tell us all about it in the comment section below. On our Tumblr, which is Berkcast with a capital B, capital C. And on our Tumblr, which is Berkcast Team. So until next time, I was HC.
I was Wolf.
And we will see you all next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.